All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Topics on the Edge. I have my buddy Max here, and we're going to just start the conversation off with how'd you get into trading stocks, Max?
It's a good question. It's a question that I'm sure everyone has a good story for. When I came out of university, I ended up working for a number of different funds. I was trading yen futures, I was trading interest rate differentials on yen, and then I was also trading statistical arbitrage algorithms on correlated and co-integrated asset classes for a long time. But the truth is, I got really disillusioned with finance. I think that everyone has this idea of what financial services is like, and then once you start doing it, you realize it's just spreadsheets and it's pretty miserable. So in kind of late 2018, 2019, really, I was actually just going to get out of finance altogether. I took a number of interviews and actually got a role at a legal AI firm where they would kind of do all the documentation or AI would, and I was about to accept it. And the only reason I didn't was because I had suddenly found small caps. What really had happened was COVID started, and I had a decent understanding of financial markets generally, but I knew nothing about small caps. This was something way off my radar. It didn't even exist. And one fortunate tweet, I followed one guy on Twitter, on X, who I followed loads of people, but this one person kept tweeting like all of the students in this room were making this amount of money. And it wasn't on my radar, but I just clicked into it one day. And looked at this guy's Twitter, and he had loads of people in there. There was one of them that was British because I'm from London. So I thought, all right, let me before I accept this job, let me just see if there's any way that I might continue in finance independently. So I messaged this guy from the UK who was in this guy's room and said, is this legit? And he said, yeah, it's great. We're trading this thing called small caps. And I was like, okay. So I went into this room probably like a week before I told this job, no, I wasn't going to accept the job. I was going to continue trading, and decided, yeah, right, I'll give it a go by myself. I had some savings from obviously the work that I'd done previously, but joined this room, and was suddenly thrown into the world of small caps where you're in 1 minute charts and everything moves extremely quickly and you've got riggers. It was a bit mad, to be perfectly honest. So it was if not for those tweets and that one person tweeting as often as they do, I definitely wouldn't be here today.
That's crazy, man. So like if I'm understanding this correctly, like so you basically just jumped straight into full time then
Yeah.
because you told the company that you're gonna work for, hey man, I'm gonna do my own thing and I'm gonna go trade this stuff called small caps. And
So I realized in that the pandemic had just started, and I didn't know what the world was necessarily going to look like. And we were doing all these interviews over Zoom, and I just thought, right, let me give it a year. Um, I have enough kind of saved up where we're not allowed to go out, we're not allowed to go anywhere. I can't spend any money. I can't go to the gym. I can't see my family. I can't see my friends. All I can do is feed myself and pay my rent. And if that's all I'm going to be able to do for the foreseeable future, I've got the money to do that. So let me give this a year and see how I get on and where I go. And if it doesn't work out, then I know that there's probably this legal AI job kind of in a year's time they'll still be hiring. I'll go back and apologize and try and talk my way back into it.
that's crazy. So did you start like longing stocks at all, or like the second you got in, you're like, oh, okay, so like you understood like the whole short selling thing and all that. Like you didn't have to go through any of the like the breakout rooms, all that. Like
No,
my story of getting
I was quite fortunate because the first room and the only room that I've really been in, they were just, I mean, they short and long, but they're primarily shorting these stocks. And the thing is, it was weird because when I got into the room, I knew nothing about really what they were doing. All I could see was stock tickers. So I was going through the tickers and I had, a decent understanding of technical analysis generally. And I was like, oh, this seems quite straightforward. There's a trend break after this happens and you short it. But that was a really ill-conceived notion because the first time I started trading, the market opened, moved so quickly, I had no idea what was going on, and there's so many riggers and there's so many traps. So I was never in a breakout room. I was really fortunate that I ended up just in this short room. But what it did do, I don't use the strategy. I tried using the strategy, and the truth is, it just didn't resonate with me. I think it's super important when you find a trading strategy that it matches your personality and your style. But what it did do is teach me what small caps were. It taught me about dilution, it taught me about riggers, it taught me a lot about kind of what to look for rather than how to make money. So I was able to kind of take all the pieces that I learned from that room and then start to work on something that made sense for me as a trader.
So how did you find your style then? If you got into this room and you started to trade, and because I've had a lot of these different rooms I've been in, and like how I did it was I find bits and pieces from each one of these rooms I get into, and I kind of morph it into my own style. But what was the thing that kind of really made everything kind of click together, and you're like, oh, this makes sense to me and my personality?
So I remember the exact day it happened. I remember exactly where I was, where I found the strategy that started making me profitable and money. And it was because of, right, so Traderyos, when I started with I didn't open a broker with anyone else. The only reason I opened a broker with Traderyos is because I'm from London. And I assumed I couldn't open a center point or like a Cobra trading account. So I opened an account with Traderyos straight away. The reason that I found profitability was forced efficiency, because what was happening is I was having profitable days with Traderyos, but then I would wake up the next day and check my balance and I'd lost money. And I couldn't understand why. And the problem was I was just getting destroyed on fees and commissions at Traderyos. So my first thought process was, this strategy can't work with this amount of money because you need more money, so you get ECN rebates, for example, or you're paying smaller low-K fees. Essentially, it's like a broker racket. And then I was sitting on my sofa, and I remember just looking over at the chart. I had like 5 or 6 of them up from that day when we had like a crazy market in 2019, 2020, and thought to myself, the thing is, if I can lower my executions, so as opposed to maybe 15 or 20 executions a day, only having 2, then my fees would go down massively and my profitability would go up. So then I started thinking, well, I'm going to need to only take the trades that have the highest probability of actually working, of actually fading all the way down, rather than just trying to fight for scraps with a broker that's just going to destroy you in fees. So when I shifted to that methodology, it was very much about kind of what we previously discussed about finding levels in the market where you can have a ceiling and you have a floor with small caps. You got your pre-market high and you've got yesterday's close, for example. And it was, right, if I'm only going to open one short position and I'm only going to close it once in order to minimize my amount of fees because I'm trading with this specific broker in order to maximize my profitability, where is the best place for me to open it? And where is the best place for me to close it? The moment I started focusing on just that and lowering my executions and just the highest probability outcomes, then things just started to turn around really, really quickly.
So you do only have like one, you go in full size and you're like, all right, I want to just hold this thing. Like, how do you decide if you're going to stop it out break even, or like every time you take a trade, like for instance, the way I trade gap and craps, like I will trade, I take one entry and I know what my risk is every single time with pre-market high. That's how I play it. But for me, I do have multiple different areas that I'll cut it off, but I also have, if I take my first profits, my first little piece of profits, my stop always goes to break even. So do you have like a way to calculate break even, or every time you take your trade, it's either you win big or you take a small loss?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So what I then started doing was taking kind of all the things that I had learned from working in different funds, and I started modeling it out. And what I realized was, end of day is by far the most profitable way to actually close trades, because I know it sounds counterintuitive, but there are times, sorry, I've got a fly here. There are times that stocks will just completely melt to nothingness. And over a large enough data set, that plays out really quite nicely. So even though I used to use the 5-minute 200 moving average as my target, because if you whack that on any chart, you'll see every time a stock fades, it will bounce there. But what I then essentially did was, I'm going to have one entry. Where's the best place for me to put this entry? And then I'm going to hold it all day. Now, early on, that was really difficult. So if you look at charts of mine from years ago, you'll see that I would cut it at kind of the 5-200. And that was because I didn't have the confidence in, I think the problem is when you start trading, especially your own capital, you see profit and you want to take it pretty quickly. And that's what a lot of people do, and I struggle with that. But I'm at a stage now that I'm quite comfortable with the edge that I've built, so I will hold everything until the end of the day. Um, that was when I had one setup. So when I left that room, I had one setup, and I traded that setup for 2 or 3 years, and it was extremely profitable and did very well for me. But I now have 3 different setups where I've got a pre-market, I've got the gap and crap, and then I've got a backside setup, and they all should work sequentially. And what I mean by that is, if the pre-market setup fails, then the gap and crap should work, and if that fails, then I'm waiting for the backside. The nice thing about having that sequential nature of setups is you should understand what your profitability is on all 3 of them. So maybe, my win rate is 70% on the first one, 80% on the second one, and 60% on the third one. What that then enables you to do is, once you understand what the average risk to reward is, you can then size in a way that if you get stopped out on the first 2, your third one, providing it works, you should always end green. So by being able to take your win rate, the risk reward on them, and spreading those setups sequentially, you can then mathematically start to create a system that, unless you have a stock like Mirror, which was last Monday, I think, that just went to the moon, the majority of the days you'll end up green.
Dude, that's cool as shit. Like how you've like pieced that together, because I kind of did something somewhat similar. Like if like say my gap and crap doesn't work, then I do play like the pop and fell of pre-market high, but that's a very small risk. I always risk like the top of the wick, but if it goes above that, then I have a way to play a gap and extension, but it has to react in a certain way, or I just don't even touch it.
Yeah.
But if that does react, dude, that's like really like that's probably my most profitable setup, because the fade on those things is like that. That's where, like, when that happens, that's when I know from experience I have to like check myself, because I get so like, fuck yes, all right, like you would think that I'd be sad that I got stopped out on the first 2, but I'm actually happy, because I'm like, dude, I'm like, this is gonna rip out a bunch of like impatient shorts. You got all these guys scaling on the front side, they're getting blown out, it just goes higher and higher and higher, and you wait for a nice like lower high backside setup. Oh my god.
It's a great point that you've just made, because having those setups, I think, in my mind, or at least for me, stops me going on tilt. If I know, right, I will get another setup in the day, there is a high probability that setup will get me profitable. You just need to wait for it to show. That stops you from just making dumb trades. And I think that new traders that come in that don't have the faith in these setups, or have these setups, they'll take losses and then just keep fighting the stock, and that's how they blow up. Whereas if you actually have a system, and like you said, like if you short the pre-market high with like a tight stop and they fade, the risk reward on those things are huge.
Yeah.
And knowing, right, okay, I've been stopped down, but there's probably more than likely going to be another setup for me that's going to take me green. That, for me at least, gives me enough patience and peace to be able to sit there on my hands quietly and wait for that setup to come. One thing I am working on is a long setup at the moment, because if those 3 don't work, then I have a red day. But what I found is, if those 3 don't work, it's usually because it's a stock like Mirror on the 22nd of July, I think Mirror was, that just goes to oblivion. So if I fail on those 3, it's more than likely the stock's going to run all day, and it's just about identifying the best place to start getting long.
See, like I have not really worked on a long yet. Because one of my worst trading like habits actually came from longs, because it was during COVID, and I got so happy because it was like I was able to just size in so much, and I was making so much money, and like I got so greedy. But then I don't know what the hell happened. I don't know if they did like a partial offering or whatever, because it didn't die. It gave you another opportunity, but this thing tanked like $1.50. I was in like a ungodly amount of shares, and I wasn't keeping myself in check, and that was a huge lesson for me. But then, is it easy to borrow a stock? And I went on tilt, and I went balls in on this thing when it did a fake breakout high of day, and like that ended up, like, at that point in my career, that was the biggest trade of my entire career. But I didn't understand the damage that it did, because it worked. And
Yeah.
then, I explained to some people sometimes. I used to use Steve Goldstein as a mind coach,
Yeah.
and like we would always laugh because I was like, dude, I was like, I'm literally like Russell Brand. Like I'm like a little crafty crackhead that like if you give me like a little bit of like leeway, I'm gonna just bust the door down and just start breaking every rule in the
Yeah.
book. And I'm just like, I really have to watch myself because it's not just on the bad side of things, like when everything's like negative and you start kicking yourself down and like you're having a rough patch. But I also have it on the flip side when I'm like I get way too cocky or overconfident, and that can also be like I have to be very mindful of myself. And when I was talking to Steve Goldstein, he was just saying that that's my personality, that I'm a very
Yeah.
like I trade with my feelings. It's like I can, when I look at a chart, I can, all I see is emotion. It really is just straight emotion to me, and I can start seeing just by the way that people are trading that I can be like, oh, like dude, he's dealing with anxiety, or like he's messing with all these emotions. And so when I went back and started backtracking all my trades, like I could really see, I'm like, I need to do like some soul searching because I got some shit going on here because I don't know what this is, but my wife calls it like it looks like somebody just sprayed like a shotgun like all over the thing. It's like, are you short? Are you long? Like what's going on here? And I was like, all right, I need to like stop going long because this is just fuck with my emotions too much. And so I just stick with I have 3 setups I use, and I have like very, very specific, like, hey, if I get in here, I feel like that's the biggest problem with beginner traders. Like whenever I start like, trying to like talk with beginner traders or they ask me for help or whatever, most of them don't have like a clear cut, like I'll be like, hey, what are your setups?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, I trade gap and crap, gap and extension. I was like, that's cool. The phrase gap and crap or gap and extension, but what does that mean to you? Or
Yeah.
like, does it have to look a certain way? Does it have, what's the float like? Do you care about the news? Like, does it have delusion? Do you have any of these things figured out? And it's usually just like this blank stare, like they're like I'm speaking a different
Yeah.
language. I'm like, yeah, dude, like if you don't have your entry, your risk, and your target set out, you're not trading, you're gambling. You're
Yeah.
just that's not the job of trading, just pushing a fucking button.
Yeah.
Any moron can push a button. It's like the second you push the button, Steve Goldstein, I love how he says trading is a performance activity. It's a sport.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that because there's so many things that like go from my kickboxing career and fighting into trading. And I feel like that's why I was able to kind of find my stride a little bit faster than a lot of people, is because I took this and plugged it into here and I was able to do that. But it was funny because I never dove into my mindset with fighting. I was just this badass that had no emotions or whatever, and that really kicked my ass in trading because you hear all these guys that are talking about their emotions and this and that, and I'm just like, what the hell are these guys talking about? And then
I
you
know what
start
you mean.
you start you start diving into that stuff, and you're like, oh, this shit's like real, dude. Like you
Yeah.
start diving into who you are. And I remember some people like they stopped saying it to me, but they're like only 1% of traders actually make money. And I was just like, my answer, like after a while, was like, yeah, but if you go into a store or into a Walmart, right? Like, how many people do you feel like actually have their shit together? If you really walk around there and you look at every single person in this place, 99% of them don't have their shit together. Is
Yeah.
it really that crazy that only 1% of traders figure themselves out? Because if you don't have your setups, you don't understand how you work as a person, and you don't have any rules or any discipline, of course you're not going to be successful. It's a whole package that you have to bring together. And so, what is some of the things that you really had to work on? Did you have like a rough patch in trading that you had to kind
Yeah.
of dive into things?
So 2022, I think, was generally rough for a lot of people. I think the market changed, and I don't think that I adapted particularly quickly. But the truth is, the main issue that I've had, that I always have, that I still have to today, but I'm much better at dealing with it, is it's something that you said a moment ago. I'll have 3 or 4 weeks of really, really strong profitability, where I might have 3 or 4 weeks where I don't have a red day at all, or a red trade, in fact. Everything will be green. And then I'll have one day where I'm slightly down. But the problem is, because I've had 3 weeks of just really good profitability, you have that mindset of, I know what I'm doing. So then what happens is you start straying outside of your typical setups, because you're like, well, I've done extremely well over the last 3 weeks. I know what I'm doing. I know how to control this market. But you don't. You've got no idea what you're doing. So then the moment you start coming out of your setups, which are there for a reason, they're setups that have been tested, that you understand, but yet you have this unfounded confidence because you've had 3 decent weeks. I start then doing things I shouldn't be doing that are not my setups. I then lose way more money than I should. Not a stupid amount, but just more than I should. And that's what irritates me the most. And then I come back the next day and I'm so frustrated at myself because I did something stupid and lost more money. I then do another stupid thing to try and make that money back. And this was a cycle that I had for a long time. And it used to take me like a week or 2 weeks to then realize what I was doing, go back to kind of making sure that I'm just sticking to my setups, and then finding my way back to profitability. I'm better at it now because I have the self-awareness to say to myself, you're doing well. If you have a red day, it's not the end of the world. But dealing with it is almost like tilt in a way, where you something goes wrong, and then because you're so used to doing well, you're so overconfident, you just do stupid shit that you should never do. But it's just about understanding that. It's about recognizing that behavior. Everything that we as humans do is a pattern. And once you start to recognize your patterns, you as an individual, you can then start predicting them. So predicting it, when I'm having a good stretch, I will say to myself, right, okay, more likely you'll have a point where you lose money. When you lose that money, don't start straying from it. And then the moment that I do start losing money, I can say to myself, right, just turn the computer off and walk away. Because the moment you start doing something stupid, that's when you're going to go into a week or 2 weeks of just unnecessary drawdown, which, quite frankly, every time it happens, I go into a drawdown because I'm doing things I shouldn't do. If I just follow my playbook step by step, then the drawdowns are always really quite short. So for me, it's that vicious cycle of overconfidence, which leads to stupidity, and that stupidity leads to frustration. That frustration leads to losing money. I mean, ultimately, we're all in this game for one reason, and that's to make money. So I think it's as important to recognize patterns in yourself as it is to recognize patterns in the market. The moment you start saying, these are my patterns, the same way that a stock has a gap and crap or gap and extension, or a parabolic, the moment that you recognize your patterns, then you can start executing the patterns in the market more effectively.
Dude, I honestly couldn't have said it better myself, because it is so funny. Like, I love that I started this podcast and I started talking to people. It's crazy how, I was talking to somebody yesterday, and I was like, we all have the same journey, and it's just, the names are a little bit different, the money is a little bit different, but it's all the same path. Like, listening to you, I had all these moments popping up in my head. I was just like, yeah, like for me, I turn into a fighter when I do that. And so depending on how bad I do it, I might take the next day off, because I get so pissed that I fight the stock, and it never ends well for me. And so I've learned that depending on how bad it was, or how much I went on tilt, then I have to kind of check in with myself. I do a lot of meditation, and I'll be like, all right, like, how pissed am I? Because if it's really bad, I'm like, all right, hey honey, we're gonna go on a trip, or we're gonna do this or do that, and I'm not trading today. And I really have to do that, like, because I haven't got to the place of controlling myself as well as it seems like you have. I'll still, I don't know, or maybe that is my way of controlling myself, is just taking myself away from the situation. But You know what? Do you have like a routine like when you're getting ready to trade stocks, and now that you have a young kid, the house,
Yeah,
I'm sure that your routine's changed quite a bit. And
yeah.
how's that been?
So my routine used to be, and my trading has changed a lot now, especially because I have a 1-year-old, so I need to kind of spend a lot more time outside of the office and inside the office. My routine used to be I would write out my trading setups every single day when I first started kind of finding profitability. And that was just so it was fresh in my mind of what exactly it is I'm looking for. So I'd get to the desk, the first thing I would do, I've got a notebook, it's actually over there, filled page after page after page. And one of the things I used to write all the time was stock selection is your edge. I firmly believe that my ability to choose the right stocks to short was the edge, because you might have 5 or 6 gaps in a day and 2 or 3 of them are going to rip people's faces off. So I used to write repeatedly stock selection is your edge, and it was about finding the ones with high dilution, with good gap stats, that had a good daily chart, that had clear resistance, that had baggies. Um, and then I would basically start scanning pre-market and then looking for things to trade. My setups have changed now where I'm a lot more hands-off. So for me now, I've got a piece of paper in front of me that basically says root, share size, percentage move at the open, and price at the open. And what that is to me is basically trying to get an understanding of the volatility of the stock, making sure that I use the right routes and making sure that I'm calculating the right share size. My process now is very different because I'm far more systematic in the way I do things. And the only reason I'm more systematic is because I now have 5 years of data on the way that I trade. So having had 5 years of data, I wrote something online maybe like 2 months ago. You might have seen that, like, I saw something in a Discord room that's changed very much the way I trade. What I was able to do is just go through 5 years of my own data and find things that I'm really, really bad at, and then the things I'm really, really good at, completely remove all the bad things, and then focus all my attention on the good things. So here's a great example, especially when we're talking about process. I have a negative expectancy on Mondays. There's a lot of traders I know that have the exact same. This is for a number of reasons. Monday's gap is a slightly more difficult. Usually you get more runs on Monday. But the reason that I'm negative on Mondays is because I get too excited over the weekend to trade. So then Monday rolls around, I haven't traded in 2 days, and I'm basically itching to trade. And I start usually then doing things kind of out of the normal. Like maybe I'll scale into this position slightly earlier than usual because I think it will more than likely top out here, and then I get my face ripped. And that again comes down to pattern identification in behavior. Me understanding that I'm so itchy over the weekend to get trading, and then on Monday I lose money. So what I've done is basically size down to nothing on Mondays. I know my entire expectancy over the week. I know Thursday and Friday I make the most amount of money. Tuesday and Wednesday are okay. Monday's pretty much negative. So by recognizing that, I size down on Mondays, and then I kind of get over that hump of wanting to trade because I've done it on a small scale. If I lose much smaller than I typically would, and then size up properly to trade Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So my routine nowadays is very much just about making sure that I'm trading the right stocks and that I'm calm going into the open and that I've got everything set up in the way that I need it to. My processes now are very different from what they used to be, and I think that just is because I now have 5 years of small cap experience.
So you've brought up Trade0 a couple times, and I remember you saying that like you stayed with Trade0 even though obviously you have enough money for a big account because of the way that they let you do like taxes or whatever. But
Yeah.
are you still with Trade0, or did you move to a different broker?
I moved to Centerpoint, and I'm very happy there. I mean, I also have a Cobra account set up, but Centerpoint was just quick, and I just needed to. There was a day maybe 2 or 3 months ago, some guys may remember, but Trade0 went offline like at market open, and I had loads of very heavy positions from pre-market. And everyone knows that market open is possibly the most dangerous time to have positions from pre-market because it can go and clear pre-market high in a second. It can hold into anything. And their platform, I think it was their mobile platform, their web platform, and their actual TZ Pro. It was offline for about 13 minutes, which for a trader at market open, when you're full size, is really, really, it feels like an eternity. It's very bad. So that day I opened a Centerpoint account. I'd never used DAS Trader before, but I've been using it. I've automated some of my processes with DAS because you can, which is really cool. You can't with Traderyos as far as I'm aware. And yeah, they're brilliant. I mean, you get rebates essentially if you're adding liquidity. Their locates are extremely cheap. I'm sure I can say the exact same about Cobra. But yeah, no, I'm very glad to be away from TradeZero.
Yeah, I actually do remember that when
Yeah.
when that happened, and going back to like your days of where you do really good and then you have like really bad day or whatever. I remember talking to you a couple months ago because you're one of the guys that I actually like follow, and like I start seeing how everything's going on, but uh I remember like when that day went on and everyone was freaking out,
Yeah.
and you know when you first start and you're using small size, yeah, okay, you're gonna freak out because you don't have like a lot of money. But when you got full size positions on
Yeah.
and everything's just blank,
Yeah. It's not
yeah,
even it's not even just like, let's say that you've got 300 grand on the account and you're risking 1%, so you're risking 3k per position, and you've got 5 positions on, so you've got 15 grand of risk. It's not just when that happens, you potentially losing 15 grand because you don't have any stops on because it's pre-market and the market's just open and you've got no time to put stops on. So if those stocks ran in, like I remember BBLG last week or the week before it was
yeah,
open.
last week.
Yeah, in the first like 2 or 3 minutes just halted straight away. If you're in one of those and it goes and just runs, I mean, BBLG I think actually did cleared pre-market high and then faded back down. But like even Mirror, I know Mirror had like really tight all bands last Monday on the Monday on the 22nd. It was an absolute nightmare to trade. But if you're stuck in that and your risk is somewhat tight and you're risking 15k and it's going to keep halting up and up and up and your broker is down, that's very bad.
Yeah.
So I just had enough. I couldn't do it. I couldn't be in a position where I lose all of my money for something that had absolutely nothing to do with me.
I can I can definitely understand that. I've only had that happen to me a couple times, but luckily not everything was down. Not like the web and the platform and the mobile, all of them. I was able to, when that happened to me, I was able to at least get on the mobile and like close out my positions. I have to like, I have my hotkeys, and so I'm over there like typing shit in, trying to get out of like that. That's also like, what the fuck am I doing, dude? Like,
Yeah.
this is ridiculous. But I at least could get out. Like obviously you have a little bit of slippage, but I mean, when everything's down, that's gotta be a horrible feeling.
Yeah, I was calling them endlessly.
Oh, dude.
Just kept calling them and trying to get through. And there's a guy in one of the rooms it's not really like a room, it's like a trading pod of like 15 of us, I think. And he's got the CEO, Dan, on like hotline, and he was texting the entire time and he was screenshotting it and putting it into the group saying this is what the CEO is saying right now. And it was interesting. So yeah, I won't be going back to trading zero.
That was gonna be my next question. Is if you said that you are not in any trading communities, and so I was gonna see if you were in like any like accountability groups or small groups and all that kind of stuff, because I can
Yeah.
imagine you trading full time. It gets boring as shit sometimes, and so
It's lonely game. I'm not in any like paid rooms or anything. I've been in a number of paid rooms. I was in the one that I started with, and then after that there were some things from some paid rooms I wanted, like scanners, for example. So I joined them, get the scanners, get an understanding of how they work. But the only rooms I'm in now there's 2 trading pods, and a lot of the guys from those 2 pods are in the same room anyway. And I was invited to those by some guys on Twitter. They're really the guys in the room are great. I mean, most of them are doing between like 100 and 500 grand a month. So it's an insane group of people to be around. They're super smart. And weirdly enough, they're super humble, because I come in sometimes saying, listen, I know this is a dumb question. And they're like, yeah, there are no dumb questions when I'm talking about coding and DAS. But then I'm also in the free-for-all room where there's been lots of beef all over Twitter today. The chairman who set up his free-for-all room with like 400 people in there. I'm not in there necessarily for like anything trading related. It's just good because it gives me a heartbeat on the market. But yeah, the trading pod I'm in is extremely vital to the way I trade. I actually left it This is something some people don't talk about. At least maybe they do, but not that I've picked up on.
I'd like to take a second to thank our sponsors, Traders Edge Academy. They have a free community on the Skool platform that goes over the 3 pillars of trading: the technical pillar, the performance pillar, and the self pillar. They guide you on your journey in trading and give you absolutely everything you need to become a profitable trader. If you're interested at all, click the link in the description and follow to their page.
I was invited to this trading pod with these absolute killer traders. Some of you probably would have seen on Twitter. They do so well. But I left after a month of being in there and just said, listen, I need to take some time away, because the problem is when you're surrounded by so many good traders doing different things, you tend to then step outside of your own setups and try and emulate what they're doing, but you don't necessarily really understand why they're doing what they're doing. And it might be that they're only risking 1/10 of their profit on the day to try an idea that they're putting into the room. Oh yeah, I'm short here, or I'm going long this, whatever reason. And I found myself then doing things that were completely outside of my setups, and it was just distracting me, and I actually went into a small drawdown on setups that just weren't mine, because I wasn't really paying attention. I was too engulfed in the idea of these amazing traders. So I left for a month, got my head screwed back on, and then spoke to the guy that invited me and said, do you mind coming back now? I have a firmer understanding. So now I actually stay out of the room a lot of the time during trading hours, and then we'll catch up on it. One thing as well, is you asked me something about new traders earlier. I think the greatest piece of advice to give a new trader that's kind of in that Discord era of their trading lifestyle would be to find a good room, but then go through the entire Discord chat from start to finish. Because when I joined this trading pod, when I was invited to it, the very first thing I did was go to the beginning history of the messages, and I was up to like 5 o'clock in the morning, just scrolling through and reading all of these, really experienced guys and what they were talking about and what they were doing and what they were looking at, because I felt like I'd learned so much knowledge, like years and years of experience from these guys in one night by sitting there and just learning their thought process and how they work and what it is they're looking for. All these things I hadn't realized in the past. I think it's one of the most vital things you can do. Read it like a novel. Find the best trading pod room you can. Go to the very beginning and read it all the way through.
It's really crazy that you say that, because my wife there's been a couple times I've joined rooms and I literally do that, and I just scroll through the whole thing, and like that's essentially how I figured out my style, because like I said, I took bits and pieces from everybody and I kind of made it my own. But I have it's a very controversial opinion, but I actually think that Discord rooms are actually horrible for beginner traders, because really, like, it turns it into like it's just a bunch of little crackheads running around and they have no idea what the hell they're talking about. Then it's one funny thing that you said is you're around all these killers. They're just making ungodly amounts of money, but the key word there was they're humble. It's really funny how you can tell really, really quickly that most people are absolutely full of shit, because the guys that are super loud and talking all the time, either they're full of shit or there's just something's wrong there. But the problem is the beginner guys don't have enough experience to be like, there's something wrong here. It's like they praise these guys.
Yeah, exactly.
And I actually got into some shit like probably a week ago, because I called out this guy that had one of the worst trades I've ever seen in my life. He's trading all front side, then short and weakness, and then he's calling everybody in this Discord room a sheep. And I was just like, dude, you're a fucking retard. I was like, shut up, dude. It's just like, you don't that's the worst chart I've ever seen. And then you have the balls to come in here and call these beginners sheep. First off, if they're in here, they're trying to better their lives and they're really hustling to do something good. They're not sheep, dude. So like, you need to chill the hell out. And it's just like, it's so crazy, man. Like how so many people can just get these, and maybe he is killing it. I have no idea. I doubt it, but maybe he is. But at the same time, even if you are killing it, you going out there and being a giant piece of shit, like, you put bad energy out there, bad energy is going to come back. Like, you want to do something good, like, pick people up and help them out and brush them off. Like, don't be a dick.
Yeah. Every killer I've met, and I've been in like a number of rooms. I've been invited to a number of these different pods, and there really are guys in there doing, you know, 400 or 500 grand a month, are incredibly kind, incredibly humble, and a lot of the time quite quiet. And the truth is because they've been, to get to that level, you have to go through so much shit. And once you've been through that much shit, you're either too tired to bother fighting with people, unnecessarily, so you don't, or you actually empathize with people, or you understand that, you know, I've been through so much to get to, you know, this level of consistency, this level of growth where I'm at right now. In order to stay there, you have to stay in some kind of Zen flow state. I say to my partner all the time that when I move in and out of flow states with trading, where there are times that it comes so naturally and so easily, even when the market's difficult, I just know what I'm doing and I'm executing it really well. And if you're chatting shit with people online and you're fighting with people online, I don't understand how you could ever be in enough of a flow state to consistently make money trading. This is one of the hardest games on the entire planet, without any shadow of a doubt. You are fighting all of these robots, you know, throwing money around. It is so incredibly difficult. You're working with people you're fighting against people that are going to be much smarter than you, that are going to be much faster than you, they're going to be far more capitalized. So for one moron to go around and open his mouth and make himself look like an idiot, it's not a moron that's going to be around for very long.
Yeah, you know, I've never had that problem with traders, but one thing I have been catching myself on lately, and I actually just talked to my wife probably 2 hours ago about this, because, you know, there's very controversial stuff that's going on in the world right now, and I got sucked into a conversation probably like 4 or 5 days ago, and like it just caused a bunch of shit. And I remember talking to her last night, and I was just like, man, I really just gotta stay off of this shit, because like for me, no matter what, like I'm not gonna be able to change anybody's mind. Nobody's gonna just all of a sudden be like, oh my gosh, the way that Adam thinks is absolutely amazing. I totally agree with that guy. They're probably like, yeah, fuck Adam. At the same time, like, you know, they start saying stuff. I have the same view back towards them, and I'm just like, you know, it's not a good place to be no matter what. And it's just like, you know, last night I was talking to her, I was just like, you know, I think I need to do this and that. Like I said a couple hours ago, start getting all these messages and stuff. I'm just like, yeah, I think I'm just gonna like just stay off and just, you know, stay in my own little bubble again, because really that's one thing that I started noticing is how much better or how much more focused I'd be when you just cut out all the bullshit. And you know, that's probably one of the best I've done is in trading. And you know, like we were talking before we hopped on here, like I've been crazy busy all freaking day, and it's, you know, I'm sitting here and then my phone's going off and I'm just like, what is this shit? And I got some dude chewing my ass out, and then we have a conversation, and then he's like, oh hey, you know, actually you want to grab lunch? And I'm like, no, I don't want to grab lunch. Like, what do you mean, dude? I'm like, I got work to do, man. You know, I don't wish anything bad on you or whatever, but no, this is not. I've already wasted enough time on this conversation, you know, and it's just, you know, sticking your own lane. I think that was you know, one of the best pieces of advice I got from, you know, a trader a few years ago is just block out all the bullshit, and don't compare yourself to other people back to trading, because, you know, like you were talking about being in that pod, and you know, that was one of the biggest problems I had at the very beginning, because I came from being a kickboxer, and I felt like I had a pretty big name. And so when I got into trading and nobody knew who I was and nobody gave a shit who I was there to like really make a name for myself and really be like, hey, I know what I'm doing, you know. And like that ego in me came out, and I started pushing a lot of size and trying to make a name for myself. But then it's like, you just need to just block that shit out, because the second I stopped, like I made a lot of progress really fast, but then it went to my head and I went full time too quickly, and I didn't listen to anybody that's like, you know, kind of like what you did. You had money set aside. I not only went full time, but I bought a brand new house in a place I never even been before. I don't have my network around me, nothing, and it was right it's 2021, right before 2022, and like you said, the market changed. Yes, I absolutely noticed that. The problem
Yeah,
was, dude, I was going like balls in, and I'm like, dude, I got the mortgage to pay for, and like that shit was just, it didn't set well with my style, and I didn't have the experience, and I was under so much stress that, now when I talk to people, I talk a lot about life balance. And if you're in such a rush that you want to quit your 9 to 5 job and do all this stuff, then just fucking quit your 9 to 5 job. But don't be
yeah,
looking at trading to be like your escape from this shitty life. Go get out of that shitty life and then come to trading, because it trading's gonna kill you.
yeah. Without a shadow of a doubt.
It's gonna absolutely annihilate you. But people don't listen to me. I talk to people all the time that I'm like, yeah, so what do you do for work? And they're like, oh, I trade full time. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? Like, why are you going full time? I was like, no, no, no. Like, but at the same time, my uncle says all the time, he's like, you can take a horse to a watering trough, but you can't force it to drink.
Yeah,
And it's like the same thing. You can tell people all you want, hey man, don't do this, don't do that. You know, I it sucks. It really sucks if you do it wrong. And like kind of like how we're talking off screen, those mistakes ended up, costing me, like 8 months, to
yeah,
like kind of get back on. But you don't understand, you know, what that feels like to have to start all over. And but it's like, you listen to all these traders, and when it happens to you, and you have all these flashbacks of these traders that are like, hey dude, do this, and you're like, that's one of my biggest flaws, I would say, is I'm not very coachable. Like I'm one of those guys that I have to learn for myself, kind of thing.
yeah.
And it's very funny when you start going through everything and start figuring out like your own journey, your like how your emotions work, how you are. And really, I am absolutely just thankful that I got into trading, because it really made me understand who I was. That's one thing I told Steve Goldstein is, we did all these mind coach things, but like the God's honest truth, we barely talked about trading.
Yeah.
But at the end of it, I was like, I know who I am as a person. And the second I got done with that, dude, it's like everything just boom, boom, boom. And then you're like, oh my God, dude, like I wish I would have done this like 4 years ago, and it's just really cool. And then you meet people that, are doing good in life, and you find like-minded people, and you just find people, and it's like you just build a really solid foundation and start, I don't know, building things up. And you see people that, have a hard time or whatever, and you just pick them up, dust them off, and you're like, all right, man, come on, you got this shit. You've already made a lot of money. You just need to, size down a little bit and just get back to the basics. And it's, the same shit over and over, but it's really funny how it all clicks together for everybody a little bit differently.
I think everything kind of needs to be in harmony in order for it to click, for people to find profitability. Going back to what you said about staying in your own lane, and kind of zoning, putting everything else out. The best my trading has ever been is when I left every Discord room. So when I left every room, when I didn't have the influence of somebody going, oh, I think this might run, and me thinking, well, should I cut it early? Or, this is definitely going to drop. And, the moment that I cut all the noise out is when I was trading at my best. And kind of touching on what you said, somewhat about discipline, cutting all the noise out, but then training every day and eating right and making sure that your head is in the right space. If you combine those things and you just do it for like 2-3 months, you'll be in such a different place than where you were when you started. If you cut out the noise, if you do, because discipline on the outside, we actually talked about this some months ago on Twitter, I think like on X, sorry, 4 or 5 months ago. It was, if you're not doing the things outside of your trading to ensure that you maintain discipline, then how do you expect to maintain discipline when you're trading? If you can't go to the gym every day like you're supposed to, if you can't eat right the way that you're meant to, if you're not waking up when you're supposed to, if you're not going to sleep when you're supposed to, if you're not doing the things to take care of yourself, how can you expect to maintain any level of discipline when you're trading? And one of the best ways for me to do that always was to cut out noise. If there's no noise and it's just silence, then the only thing there is to listen to is my head. And if my head is saying, you know, go to the gym, find your discipline again. That's always how I ground myself. You cut out the noise, you listen to your head, you ground yourself, and you think, right, let me go back to the basics. And that's any time that I've had kind of a poor trading run because of things actually outside of the market, that's how I've always found myself going back to where I should be.
Yeah, dude. I feel like not. I mean, obviously, everything in life is connected back to trading. Kind of like what you said, that if your life's not balanced, then you're not going to be able to find success in trading. But really, I feel like at the point in my life that I walked away from everything. Like when I said that I really kind of had to pull myself up out of just, it wasn't even mud, dude. It was just straight shit. Like I just like I dived face first 10 feet off of a rock wall into a pile of shit, and I had to pick myself up and brush myself off. But like really, that was the best thing that ever happened to me ever, because it really made like I was by myself, and it made me kind of stop, and I started to listen to myself for the first time. I feel like I was so, for my entire life, I had been listening to everybody else and how they thought I should do things, and do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that, and you know, looking at, you know, the social norm and all this stupid bullshit. And it's like when you finally break away and you just listen to your own gut and like follow your own heart, it's really funny like how everything in your life just clicks together. And like I had such an amazing moment in my life for probably like a year, and then, you know, I got this job opportunity. Like I told you before, I kind of bit off a little bit more than I could chew, and it made me have to come back to, I guess, my old life, I guess. But then once I came back, then like all this background noise just kind of like set in, and I'm like, you know, it's probably like about, I don't know, I guess about 2 months ago, I got into a freaking car wreck. I thought I was gonna die. This dude hit me going like 65 miles an hour, just fucking flung me like 15 feet, like underneath another car. Then like it was 2 weeks later, my son almost died. Like we have him in the hospital. He lost like 15 pounds, like in no time. Like his stomach got all blocked up. It was a crazy, crazy time. And you know, I really felt like you know, when we're in the hospital, just sitting there and just quiet, and all you hear is the background beep, beep, beep of this fucking machine. I'm like sitting there, and I was just like, I had the same kind of thoughts that I had back when I got into that giant shithole, and I was just like, I felt like I just needed to take a step back and start listening to myself and like almost just kind of take myself away from everything for, I don't know, it's probably like a week, maybe 2 weeks. I didn't really do anything, and I just kind of sat and reflected, and I was just like, am I kind of losing myself right now? Like, how do I get myself back to being me and not controlled, but like getting molded into something that I don't want to be like. And once I did that, it was a crazy feeling, man. Like, I know it might sound weird, but like it was during a meditation that I kind of had that, and like really I just felt like my whole body was like, it almost felt like I was in like the sun was just like beaming down on me, and I just felt this amazing feeling. I was just like, it's like I just instantly snapped out of my brain, was like boom, and I'm like, oh. I like woke up, shook the cobwebs off. I was like, all right, dude, I'm good to go. And it's funny how I, like, after that happened, I started telling people that story, that, you know, either they've been through something very similar to that, or they're still kind of in that fog, and they're like, I can see it, like it sparks something in them a little bit, you know?
Yeah, it's weird. Like anyone that is that is listening, one thing I would say is that trading at times can be quite dark, and we can have pretty dark thoughts. One of the best things you can do, and one of the things I urge anyone that is listening that has ever felt that way, is to talk to other people about it. It's really important. Um, suicides in men, I will say, are extremely high. Just to pivot for a moment. And if anyone is listening and is feeling extremely dark for whatever reason, please speak to somebody, because things always get better. And it's really important to always be talking to somebody, because I know too many people in this game that have had some really, really negative thoughts. And ultimately, it's just green and red candlesticks on a chart. Look, we'll turn the computers off one day and we'll go outside and we'll touch grass. But if anyone ever is feeling, in that way, then definitely it's important to speak to somebody, because this is one of the most demoralizing professions in the world. But at the same time, it's one of the best and most exciting.
When I talk to people, like, not trying to get off on like a spiritual kick or anything like that, but like, like how I kind of believe in like spirituality is, I believe it's all locked in here.
Yeah,
You're either living in heaven or you're living in hell, and it's not like, I don't know, what if what we're in right now is, I don't know, like that existence, that this is it. But because I've had, like you said, you get in these patches where, dude, I've lived through what I consider hell, at least, and it's been just a horrible, horrible, horrible feeling. But it's really funny because when you can dig yourself out and you can find some positive thing, just a little positive thing, just hold on to and just fight for.
yeah,
It's crazy how, you know, that one little thing can just shift everything, and that sometimes that's all you need. And for me, like, honestly, that's why I married my wife. Like, I met my wife in November. I was engaged in January, and I married her in April. And like, for me,
yes.
like no shit, dude. Like, and for me, when I was in probably the darkest point of my entire life, that's when she kind of like came in. And it took probably like, I don't know, like a month and a half. But then, once again, I know this is gonna sound like my family's like just always broken, but it was my daughter. She was in the hospital, and when that crazy amount of emotion was going on, she has a really rare heart condition, and the doctor was really worried that like her heart was just like fucked.
Yeah,
And it was such a crazy emotional thing. And like, we weren't even dating yet. And when all that kind of stuff happened, I'll never forget till the day I die. I was in there, and I was on a horrible losing streak in trading too. I was getting my fucking ass kicked in trading. And I remember we finally got her home from the hospital. I'm making food in the kitchen, and I turned around, and they all were just sitting there smiling at me, staring at me in the living room. They're like, Adam. They couldn't speak English very well. They're from Colombia. So like that makes it even funnier. But they're like, Adam, come, movie. Like they can't say a sentence. It's like bits fucking
yeah,
words here and there. But like, I remember that thought is never gonna leave my mind ever. I turned around, I was like, holy shit, dude. I have a family. I was like, how the fuck did this happen? like,
yeah, yeah.
because
I
I went from like, dude, I'm not like, I was the guy that was like, I'm never getting married, I'm never doing this, never doing that. And then I had like honestly a fuck up. I almost made the worst decision of my entire life. And I got with this girl, and that's how I ended up in Florida. And that would have been the worst decision of my entire life. And that was part of the reason I ended up in like the dark rut that I was in. But just that one moment, dude, it was like I was like, what the fuck, dude? It's really crazy how, you can be in such a bad place, but it literally just takes a moment, just
Yeah.
a moment. And then it's like, and it's bliss. It's crazy, man.
Life's weird like that.
Yeah. But anyways, dude, it's probably been about an hour. I know it's getting late for you over there in the UK, but dude, this has been such a great conversation, like for real. And I can't wait to share this, and hopefully a lot of people listen to this, because I feel like there's really a lot of gold nuggets that got dropped in this, and such a great conversation. But Yeah, dude. I don't know if you want to have a like a plug-in for like your X or like just
Yeah,
Trader.
so I'm just Traderyos, I think, pretty much everywhere. So, firstly, thank you obviously for having me. I've loved being here. I think it's been sick. It's been a great conversation. I'm very glad to have spent the time talking to you. But yeah, I'm Traderyos, so Trader Yo S, which is meant to be Trader Joe's because we used to have an app. Everyone asked me where it came from. We when I was trading the fund, we would, and this was long before things like TradingView existed. This was like 12 years ago. We didn't have price alerts on currency futures that we were trading, and we thought it'd be funny to have an app that would say yo whenever it hit the price that we wanted it to hit. So we could sleep and we could do other things. Then when it hit certain prices, the app would just go yo and wake us up. We could look at the price. So we were talking about building an app called Trader Yo, like Trader Joe's, and then it just stuck. So for anyone asking, because I keep getting questions on it, that's where it came from.
That's funny shit. So Trader Yo's on X, and
Yeah,
you know, like I said, I can't remember if I said this on camera or before the conversation, but I saw that you've been killing it the last month or two, and dude, like really, that makes me happy as shit seeing that, and it's
thank
it's
you.
it's really really fucking cool, and really, if anybody did make it this far, I highly recommend following him because he really is a inspiration, and I like how humble you are and how you, I don't know, you just present, you're real. That's the biggest problem that I feel like is in the trading community is there's so much bullshit out there that it's really refreshing to see something that's real. And so I would highly recommend going and following him. But I would love to have you on in a future episode. Maybe check back in year
Absolutely.
or so and see how you're killing it then.
Amazing. Sounds good. All right. Well, thank you so much for having me again. Yeah, it's getting late here, so I'm gonna head
All
to
right,
bed.
man.
But yeah, I look forward to it, and we'll speak soon.
All right, man. Later.
Thanks, Adam.